All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're exploring how Henrik Ibsen's 150-year-old play, Peer Gynt, acts as an absolutely perfect diagnosis for our modern ecological and existential dread. And it does this brilliantly through the lens of a single character's greed. We're going to break down an incredibly insightful analysis that unpacks how this classic piece of literature holds a mirror straight up to how we interact with the world today.
We start right at the heart of the conflict. From the very beginning of the story, Peer Gynt boasts he'll soon be as rich as a lord, just as soon as he shot the great reindeer. Do you notice that? He doesn't see the natural world as a living, breathing ecosystem. To him, it's merely a resource. It's something to be hunted, extracted, and exploited just to build his own wealth and stroke his ego. He looks at the vast forest and only sees what he can take from it.
And this forces the mirror right back on us. When you strip away all the myths and folklore, how does our modern society actually interact with the natural world today? Are we building a relationship that requires balance and respect, or are we just exploiting a limitless resource waiting for our consumption? It's a heavy question, but it's the exact question Ibsen was asking over a century ago.
Section 1. The forest as resource. Let's see how this mindset builds by looking at how Peer completely subverts the traditional rules of the Nordic forest.
Think about the traditional Nordic forest for a second. It was a place of strict conditions and respect. Take the Huldra, for example. She's a mythical forest spirit who might look human, but she always hides an animal tail. It's a powerful symbol representing nature's boundaries and its ultimate refusal to just blend into human order. Encountering a Huldra meant you had to negotiate, you had to respect her strict conditions, but as the analysis points out, Peer completely ignores this delicate balance.
So, what does Peer actually do? Well, after committing a terrible act, literally kidnapping a bride from a wedding, he runs to the forest. He declares he's off to the forest deep and wide, where no one can follow, no one can find. He doesn't respect it as a sacred or conditional space at all. He just uses it as an empty void to escape his social responsibilities. He establishes this really toxic pattern right here, exploiting spaces and the beings within them without ever forming genuine connections or taking an ounce of accountability.
Section 2. Trolls versus humans. This evasion of accountability brings us to a brilliant philosophical clash underground in the Troll Kingdom.
Now, this part of the analysis is just fascinating. Check out this stark dichotomy. The Troll King asks Peer about the difference between a troll and a man. Human ethics here dictate, "To thyself be true," which, practically speaking, gets used to justify endless, greedy expansion. Meanwhile, the supposed monsters of the story, the trolls, live by the motto, "To thyself be enough." The trolls actually practice ecological stability. They possess the wisdom of knowing exactly when to stop and setting limits. Peer, naturally, claims that human motto. But as this text reveals, our human idea of being true to ourselves is often just a really dangerous excuse. We disguise our endless desire as self-realization. We demand continuous external expansion. We reject natural limits or boundaries, and we totally fail to self-reflect on the damage we cause. We tell ourselves we're just being authentic, when really, we're just being greedy. Section 3. Consuming the other. And we see the devastating, intimate impact of this mindset in how Peer treats the women who cross his path.
This breakdown brilliantly shows how Peer reduces independent beings into literal tools. Take the Huldra, representing wild space. He consumes her in space and relationship, using her for a quick physical connection and instantly abandoning her. Then look at Solveig. He consumes her in time and waiting. She sacrifices her entire life just staying in a cabin, endlessly anchoring his ego while he roams the world. To Peer, they aren't people, they're just narrative fuel for his self-centered story.
Fast forward to the very end of his life, and Peer finally asks, "Where was my true self?" And Solveig replies that it was in my faith, in my hope, in my love. While that might sound super romantic at first glance, the analysis highlights the real underlying tragedy here. Peer's identity is completely hollow. He only achieves any sense of self because he parasitically relies on the asymmetric, lifelong sacrifice of someone else waiting for him.
Section 4. Capitalism and self-deception. Let's zoom out from the individual level to see how Peer's 19th century mindset maps perfectly onto our 21st century global crises.
The source text draws a seriously powerful parallel here. Just like Peer, global capitalism often views the forest not as a complex, living community of relationships, but merely as a calculated, exchangeable asset. Whether it's burning the Amazon rainforest for cattle pastures, converting Southeast Asian jungles into single-crop palm oil, or dividing Borneo ecosystems into production units, vibrant ancient forests are simply reduced to metrics like timber volume. We see the forest, sure, but we don't actually interact with it, perfectly mirroring Peer's total detachment.
To cut through all this destructive detachment, the analysis brings in feminist critic Terrell Moy. She completely shatters Peer's self-deception by redefining that famous human motto we talked about earlier. True freedom, she argues, is absolutely not about blindly indulging yourself. As she puts it, to be true to oneself is not to indulge oneself, but to take responsibility for one's own life. Real freedom requires taking ethical responsibility for our impacts, rather than constantly running away from them.
Section 5. The Final Judgment. This lifelong evasion of responsibility brings Peer to a crushing existential reckoning at the very end of his journey.
Peer is confronted by this incredible cosmic entity known as the button molder. And the button molder tells Peer that he must be melted down into scrap metal, literally. Why? Because Peer failed to forge a definitive loop, meaning he never made a real connection or commitment to the world. A life spent only consuming others without ever giving back or setting down roots leaves you with no actual identity of your own. You just become scrap.
And that brings us to this wild, seemingly paradoxical warning from the button molder. To be oneself is to kill oneself. What does that actually mean? Well, it means to truly become a distinct self, you have to kill your endless, wandering desires. You have to finally make a commitment, accept limitations, and tie yourself to real relationships and responsibilities. By refusing to limit himself, Peer became nothing at all.
The real tragedy unpacked here is profound. When we strip the world of its inherent value just to serve ourselves, treating nature as mere background resources, and using human relationships as narrative fuel, we are the ones who end up completely empty. Endlessly expanding without defining our limits creates an existential void, leaving us as a hollow self, destined for the scrapbox.
We are currently living in a world shaped by this exact same destructive mindset. It's a mindset that is leaving us increasingly disconnected and pushing us right toward ecological ruin. We know exactly where this path leads, both for the planet and for our own souls. So, the final, haunting question we have to ask ourselves is, can we still stop?